Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick, Season 2 of Looking, Episode 1, Looking for the Promised Land. Alonso Duralde, and my designated heterosexual this week is William Bibbiani.
You're welcome.
Who got caught up just in time to see this new season. Let's take a look.
And I'm trying to learn to keep my mind in check. I listen to my friends when they say it's destiny, it's meant to be this way. I see the boss chatting, I see the boss chatting, I see the boss chatting, I hear them talk. Na 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 na. I hear them talk.
Okay, it's a rainbow and it's house music equals gay.
I've never seen it before. It's so funny. All right, yeah.
Okay, so none of that happened on the episode.
None of that was actually on the show.
Exactly, but okay, so they go up to Dom's boyfriend's house in what is it, Russian River, I guess.
I don't think they were terribly clear.
I don't know my Northern California well enough, but they went out where the redwoods are. You know.
Len referenced last season that for like his 40th birthday, he did shrooms on the Russian River, and I guess the implication is Dom's doing the same thing now that he's 40, basically.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So you know, it's funny because I watched this and Girls back to back last night, and they're both sort of like, let's get caught up with everybody episodes. You know? So we find out that basically Patrick hasn't told them that he is banging the boss.
Patrick.
Oh, Patrick, and he's still hung up on.
Charlie?
No, damn it! Why does this always happen to me?
I actually can't remember. I remember it's Patrick and
Frankie.
Kevin. Frankie?
No, is it the actor's name? Why do I do this every time with the fucking names?
Hunky
anyway,
guy.
You know, the guy.
The
guy, the cute guy, him.
Yeah, the guy who shaved his beard very, very thoughtfully and then got dumped.
Okay, so now Augustine is still sort of getting over his terrible breakup.
He's on the rebound at the moment.
And it seems to be less of a jerk this season, perhaps.
Which is
might
nice.
Be a thing. Yes, I'm all for that. And then Dom apparently seems to think that he's in an open relationship. We'll find out if that's actually the case or not.
They said that he popped the cherry on his open relationship, which implies that it's fine.
They've talked about it, but they've never actually...
Which is always sort of a risk when you're doing anything that's sort of non-conventional in any relationship, or that maybe you haven't really discussed very much. Is this okay? Like even just... I mean, I can only speak from personal... very hetero experience, but like even just flirting with someone else can be a major test early in a relationship. Like, is this okay?
Sure.
Am I allowed to flirt? Because I'm a total flirt.
Right.
Is that all right? This was an interesting episode because last season ended with a lot of very emotional cliffhangers. People in new relationships, people ending relationships, and here this is almost a standalone episode that almost barely connects to anything. It's just a matter of who's going to tell whom what happened last season, and it starts off like a goddamn slasher movie. Like, it's got the Evil Dead shot of the car, like, driving into the woods. Everyone's like, I'm so glad we're getting out of the city. And we're gonna do some drugs and have promiscuous sex. And then no one kills them. I kept picturing like a guy in a mask, like in traffic, like, God damn it, when am I gonna get there? And then he shows up and there's just these wonderful gay guys. It's like, screw this. I'm gonna go find some college hetero nymphs.
I had not made that connection, and I wonder if Andrew Haig, who wrote and directed this episode, did as well. But
like you just at the end, like as soon as Patrick has sex in the woods, someone kills them, and bam, we've got a horror movie.
True.
Like it's just the first
you're
act.
right. It is kind of waiting to happen, and I don't know if what's worse to encounter in the deep woods, a slasher or radical fairies, but that's your mileage may vary on that one.
I was disappointed that after all that build-up, they had sex in the woods and not against like the oldest tree in America.
Well,
come on.
It was
How do you resist?
Redwood. It was probably. I don't even think HBO can get you to have like sodomy against the world's oldest.
Is that
redwood.
Is there like a Christian group own that tree?
It might be on the short list of things that like the Forestry Service is like, no.
I bet there was a draft where he did it though. I guarantee you there was one where that totally paid off.
Right. And and if Darren Aronofsky had directed this episode, the tree would have ejaculated too. So to look it up.
Or in Predator.
It's a fountain. It's a fountain reference.
There you go.
Okay. So I like sort of getting caught up to what's going on here.
Yeah.
We are introduced to Augustine's potential new love interest. The bear with a house in Virginia.
I really, really, really hope that my Augie doggy has found his doggy daddy.
Oh God. Have you been like saving that for
Yes.
this? Wow. Okay.
Hoping for.
Well,
Ever since they called him Augie, that's all I could think about. And he said he insists not to be called that, but you're Augie.
Yeah, but I think
gonna
he
have to
sort
live
of
with
stuck
that.
with that one.
Yeah.
So Daniel Franzese
he's-
from Mean Girls, that's kind of cool.
But he's got a house in Virginia,
Yes.
which I'm so glad the show explained to me because that went way over my head, and I got the impression that maybe Patrick should have known what that was too.
There is slang that differs. I think in Los Angeles, it's more commonly referred to as a house in the valley. But we have a valley.
Wow, so we're
here.
slandering our own
There's
city
a
at that
reason
point.
for that. No, I'm just saying. Well, in San Francisco, they'd be like, what, the Noe Valley? I don't know if it quite works the same way.
Oh, okay, well, fair
But
enough.
anyway, yeah,
Well,
it's a
even then
thing.
it went over my head until
No,
they explained that it means HIV.
Sure.
That's what it means.
And
Yeah.
and again, I think I would say this show explains gay to non-gay people better than the Imitation Game ever does.
Well, what I love about this show, I wasn't watching the show until Alonso said we should review it. I'd heard good things, but I never made the time for it. So I completely mainlined this show like over the last week. I saw most of it in one day. And it's great. I think the show is fantastic. And one of the things that really spoke to me, again, as someone who isn't gay, is that a lot of the relationship issues are extremely universal. And so the fact that they're just handled so sensitively and honestly, for the most part, really connected with me, and I started getting a lot of anxiety over my own terrible love life.
Oh.
Like, I really started sympathizing with Patrick, and I'm just like, God, I'm really getting in my own way, aren't I? Oh, God, if only I met like a handsome woman with a beard. Like, I don't really...
I think the thing about this show is you look at a show like Queer as Folk, which in the 2000s, I'm talking the U.S. version of Queer as Folk.
I didn't see it.
In the 2000s, I think served its purpose of being like, we're breaking new ground here, and we're going to just be like capital G gay all the time, and
Right.
delving with capital I issues and that sort of thing. And I think this show can be a little more relaxed about it and just sort of be, it is about the universal issues of relationship and stuff. And there's a specificity to it.
Oh, sure. There's a backdrop that only this show has,
Yeah.
which is this community. And most shows that are, look, in many respects, this is basically a sitcom, or basically just a soap opera about people and their various relationships. But it's told with such a frankness and such a nice eye for sort of subdued drama, and it's told with such specificity. You're right that it feels different. Like when they referenced in the last season, like, am I Ross or are you Rachel?
Right.
There's a part of me is just like, yeah, this really is in some respects just kind of a laid-back Friends, isn't it?
I mean, and it does. It fits into a weird kind of half-hour place in terms of it's not exactly a sitcom and it's
Right.
not exactly a drama either. And there was that. I think we've discussed this on the Looking recaps or one of these before, where there's that book, Difficult Men, about
Yeah.
the sort of the golden age of TV and how you get all these really complicated characters like Don Draper and Tony Soprano and how
McNulty.
yeah, exactly, and the men get hour-long shows, and they talk about women get, the half hour, like they get Nurse Jackie, they get Weeds Over, and gay guys also get a half hour.
Well, it also occurs to me that there's just a certain stigma. It's just like we like to put everything in a little box. And if you are a show that is meant to be taken really seriously, you get an hour. And if you're not, you get a half hour. Why? It's really arbitrary. There's no reason why you can't tell something like good and meaningful in a half hour. Like, I'm reminded of when Rod Serling moved to the Twilight Zone after doing a whole bunch of great TV movies like Patterns and Requiem for a Heavyweight. Like on the night the Twilight Zone premiered, he was asked in an interview, so you've given up serious TV. And no, the Twilight Zone does more in half an hour than most shows do in an entire season.
It just wasn't on Playhouse 90
It wasn't on
anymore,
Playhouse
or
90, and it wasn't a genre that people looked down on, which at the time was sci-fi. And I think we look down on shows that are largely just about relationships and getting your shit together in the city, and they feel like a sitcom. It's hard not to call them a sitcom, but that doesn't mean they can't use those ideas and those tropes to tell something more meaningful than that, and Looking succeeds, I think.
Yeah, and I think what I'm finding really fascinating about this season so far is that, and this is something I don't think we've really seen on TV much, where Patrick realizes he's the other woman. He's the other. He's the third wheel, on this relationship. He's the one who is being cheated with, and has decided to kind of be okay with that, and sort of actively pursue that wherever that winds up taking him.
Well, there's a great exchange in this episode where he's talking to Augie, and he's talking about. I deal with feeling like I'm a bad person by being bad.
Right.
You deal with it by trying to be good. And I'm not sure either of those things are even necessarily healthy, because Patrick is in some ways in denial about what he's going through.
Sure.
And Augie is just making the situation worse half the time by not using his feelings of shame to try to make himself into a better person.
Yeah, Augie tends to double down, and so I think it'll be interesting to see if he does wind up having a relationship with this new character who is clearly, somebody who is a good person for a living.
Dude's awesome. But he's also got HIV, and this is something that doesn't get dramatized terribly often on TV or in film, is the idea of being, someone who doesn't have HIV and in a relationship with an HIV positive person.
Of mixed couples, definitely.
That's a seriously, it happens, and it can be great, is my understanding, but it also comes with a lot of concerns and a lot of inherent drama to it. And I'm really hoping they just bite the bullet and go for it, because I kind of want to see how that works in this environment.
I try not to, look ahead or read too much about stuff, but I have heard that they are going to talk about PrEP this season. Which
PrEP.
I forget what that's an acronym for, but it's basically
I'm learning a lot of new acronyms on this.
It's pre-prophylactic treatment. Basically, for a long time there was a thing where if you thought you'd been accidentally exposed to HIV, like the condom broke or whatever, there was like this sort of emergency kind of 1 week long, I think, series of drugs you could take to make sure that you didn't seroconvert. And now there's a thing called PrEP. I think the drug name is Truvada, where basically, if you are sexually active, you can go on this drug, stay on this drug for the rest of your life, and you will not contract HIV.
That sounds great.
That's the thing.
Why isn't everyone on that drug?
It is relatively new in the marketplace, and there's been a lot of weird sort of and I'm sure the show will get into these conversations.
I hope so.
It's the drug that we dreamed of in the 80s and 90s, and now that we have it, suddenly you have certain members of the community trying to sort of sloughing it off as being kind of like a party drug, and that it's going to encourage irresponsibility, which it might, and that's certainly another
story. All contraception encourages a certain degree of irresponsibility.
Right,
but it tells you it's okay to have sex. I'm wearing a condom. Or
right.
But that doesn't mean that you're instantly going to be stupid. If you're stupid, you're going to be stupid anyway, I guess is my argument.
Yeah, no, it's not a tidy argument to have.
It's not a tidy argument.
I know, I'm familiar with both parts of it, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how this show handles it, because I think if any show on TV right now is going to have something interesting to say about this and to bring that conversation to a wide audience, this is the show. Yeah. So,
I getting back off the intensely serious conversation we're having right now, a lot of the show does have a certain Sex and the City aspect to me, which is basically just, will Patrick end up with Big or not?
Yeah, right.
And I hope he doesn't. Kevin is cheating on his boyfriend. That doesn't really, and it's not like they're in an open relationship.
Well, but I don't think Kevin is the Big here. I think the Big is the.
I thought Big was the one who was kind of a dickweed. I thought, wasn't that how it was on Sex and the City?
Big is the one.
Because John Garrett was the nice one, right? I only watched a little bit of Sex and the City.
It's complicated, but Big was essentially, even though he married somebody else at one point, like the through line was that eventually that's who she was going to wind up with. And
so we think he's going to end up with hunky necklace man.
I think the long game, yes, is that Patrick's going to wind up with the guy whose name I can't remember because he wasn't in this episode. But
it's sort of my point, where it's just like talking about how he's basically just embracing being the other man in a relationship, and as a result, I'm not looking down on him, because I understand the appeal. Dude's hot, right?
It's Russell Tovey, for Christ's sake.
Again, I'm not gay, but I try. But I understand the appeal of having sort of an illicit affair, but when you look at a show, you realize this is going to be a serialized format, and these people are going to go on for a long time. And so I don't want him to go down a self-destructive path for too long, because I like him.
Sure, and and the show's not saying oh, what a great decision he's making.
But it's also not saying it's terrible, which I think is interesting from a dramatic perspective.
Sure. No, and I think it's going to let it play out and sort of let us decide for ourselves the way good drama does. Okay, maybe this wasn't the smartest idea, or maybe it is. Who knows? We have to see where they take it.
My point is that it's a danger, particularly in sort of a love triangle element, where the audience can really tire of these things pretty quickly, and yet clearly the show thinks it's in for the long con. Case in point, News Radio with Allison Pill and what's his name? The worst will they or won't they love story in the history of television.
Newsroom.
I'm sorry, I'm saying.
You said News Radio, so you're right.
Sorry,
yes, Allison Pill.
News Radio did it great.
Allison Pill, the guy. You're right. That was the worst. Yes, no question.
Newsroom. It was absolutely terrible, and they assumed we cared way more than we did.
Right.
we didn't care at
No,
all.
I give
Like,
this show more credit than that. I think they'll be smarter about that.
I just hope they're smarter than. That's my one concern is that if it's just between, will he pick Kevin or a hunky beard guy whose name we will learn by next week?
I promise.
Then I'm going to get pissed off pretty fast. But as it stands, I'm new to the show, but I think it's an incredible series, great performances. Again, you're right, the specificity just makes it so rich, even though a lot of its subjects are very familiar, and that makes it approach old stories in a new way. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and and even like kind of. They can even go the path of like, let's have everybody do drugs and not make it preachy, but also not make it too sort of, mystical. Like they just sort of make it kind of goofy and whatever.
Yeah, like what are we going to do? We're in the woods. Everyone's prancing around in costumes. I do drugs too.
There's a mirror ball, for Christ's sake.
Kids don't do drugs. Unless like something really cool happens, like that's the thing. I'm never going to do coke, but if Mick Jagger
Does
offers,
not
I'm just gonna...
represent the viewpoints of the Young Turks Network. All right, so we'll be back next week. We'll see where all this is going. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for looking.